Count the people who get to decide what news Americans see and hear, not the anchors or the journalists, the owners, the people who can kill a story with a phone call or sell a newsroom like a used car. That list is getting shorter. And it matters because whoever owns these institutions doesn't just report the news, they decide what news is, what we focus on, what we ignore or miss entirely. They set the narrative. Right now, Warner Brothers Discovery is on the auction block. That's CNN, HBO, TNT, other stuff. Netflix has offered $83 billion to buy it, and Warner Brothers tentatively accepted. And that would be bad enough. Big corporate consolidation in media. But it gets worse. Paramount just launched a hostile counterbid for $108 billion. That bid is backed by Saudi, Emirati, and Qatari sovereign wealth funds and Jared Kushner's private equity firm. Yep, the president's son-in-law. President says he'll be personally involved in deciding which deal goes through. Now, Paramount is controlled by the Ellison family, and they already own CBS as of the last few months. They're part of the group that also just won the bid to purchase TikTok in the U.S., which it's being divested. So one family poised to control CBS News, potentially CNN, and the platform where an entire generation gets its information. A media historian has called this historically unprecedented. And after this week's Supreme Court hearing, it looks like the court is ready to let the president fire the leaders of agencies like the FTC, which would need to approve any sale for any reason. No cause required, just loyalty. And nobody in power is even pretending to seriously object. CNN was born in 1980 with about 300 employees in an abandoned country club in Atlanta. And Ted Turner's vision was almost naively idealistic. He wanted to, quote, bring together in brotherhood and kindness and in peace the people of this nation and the world. At its height, CNN had bureaus on 6 continents, reporters like Christiane Amanpour bringing the siege of Sarajevo into American living rooms. Coverage so influential that the Pentagon coined a term for it, the CNN effect, the idea that real-time independent journalism could shape foreign policy, set the agenda, make people care about things the powerful would rather they ignore. That was what independent, mission-driven news could do. And now look at what Paramount has already done to CBS. They settled a frivolous lawsuit from the president for $16 million rather than fight it. CBS's own correspondents called that extortion. The executive producer of 60 Minutes and the head of CBS News both resigned, citing loss of editorial independence. Paramount installed an ombudsman, staffers call it a hall monitor, and an ideologically aligned editor-in-chief who reports directly to the CEO, not the newsroom. There's a word for that. Capture. The elites have capitulated, and it's about to get worse.
Welcome to Signal Fire. I'm Lisa Senecal here with my podcast co-host, John Zeger. I'm not sure, John, what you were doing and what you'd accomplished by your mid-20s. I know there were not millions of people waiting to hear from me daily. I certainly, good. I'm glad to hear that. I'm not the only underachiever who is going to be on our show today. I definitely had not changed careers, to hold publicly to account one of the most powerful and dangerous movements in U.S. political history. But, we are going to talk to somebody today who has been doing exactly that. We want to welcome Aaron Parnas to the show. Aaron is 26, a lawyer by training who walked away from a career in law. We'll find out whether or not that's a permanent thing, but left law and became a full-time creator. And now, only a year later, he is one of the most influential journalists, evidence-based journalists, explaining politics and news to millions of followers across social media, YouTube, Substack, and just very recently named one of the 30 under 30 on Forbes list. So welcome, Aaron. We're really excited to be talking with you today.
What an intro. Super excited to be here.
Aaron, we're really grateful for you making it. I know, as somebody who follows your work pretty closely, that you are literally putting out content like just a few minutes before this. Something you put out this morning hit
Just
my
pull one out.
inbox.
Yep.
So we know you are really in the thick of it. But maybe let's start. Why independent media? Why this thing? I was a junior associate at a law firm many moons ago. I know how hard that is, billing thousands of hours a year and, trying to hit your
You know
targets.
why. I'm kidding.
Well, fair enough.
There you go.
Maybe
Thanks for
that
joining
answer.
us. It's been great.
Maybe, I mean, true enough. It's a grind, but it's a big leap, and certainly a law firm and a career in law at a prestigious law firm has financial rewards, it has certainty, it has a kind of obvious career progression in ways that being out there on your own does not. So it's curious, why and how you made the leap.
So I never wanted to do this. I never thought I'd have a career in kind of like a public facing career, especially not journalism. I didn't go to journalism, so I went to law school thinking that I was going to be in a courtroom the rest of my life, but kind of fell into this in February of 2022. I had family in in Ukraine at the time. Russia invaded Ukraine. I had an uncle and aunt and a cousin in Kiev, and I would be hearing on the ground from them, just out of my own kind of concern for my family, what the hell was happening on the ground. And what I would hear from them, I would then watch kind of TV, cable news here in the United States of America, and I feel like I'd be listening to two different stories, completely different narratives, one that just wasn't painting the picture of Ukraine accurately. And also it was a lot slower than what I was hearing on the ground. I would hear something from my uncle, and then an hour later, CNN would report that exact same thing. And so I was like, you know what? Like, what can I do to help get their story out? I opened up a TikTok account. I had not been on TikTok really much at all before because I genuinely I'm a boomer when it comes to like technology. So I wait a year after everyone else gets on something or like updates their phone or start to trend. So I open TikTok, make a couple videos. They start going viral. In a week, I have 1 million followers who are interested in just learning about Ukraine. And I mean, it literally happened overnight. And I literally posted 15 to 20 times a day just about Ukraine, just about what my family was experiencing. They were my firsthand source on the ground from February to October of 2022, doing that and also practicing law full time. Didn't make a penny on content creation. And then in October, my account was permanently banned on TikTok. I had literally lost it overnight. Russian trolls mass reported the account. I didn't know anyone at TikTok to get it back, didn't get it back. And so I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to go back to practicing law. Went and clerked for a federal judge, which something that I had always wanted to do. And you can't even have a public profile when you're clerking for a federal judge. So went private and then found an itch again sometime in 2024. Was like, I got to get back to doing this, and opened up a TikTok account again and just did the exact same thing and took off again.
Wow. Incredible story.
That's amazing. So I want to use Ukraine as an example of something that happens way too frequently in our 24-hour insane media cycle now, which is we can have a story that we should still be focusing on, like Ukraine. This is become an even bigger story with Trump back in office and the shifting alliances and our unstable foreign policy. How do you think about being able to use your platform to keep people focused on a story of that degree of importance for longer than the typical American attention span is?
Yeah.
Like, can you use what you do to help force mainstream media to stick with the story longer because you're raising awareness?
Yeah, and it's not just Ukraine. I mean, I think Ukraine is just one. I would argue that the better example, honestly, is gun violence. Gun violence in America has been around for as long as I was alive, as long as I can remember. In the 7th grade, was having active shooter drills on campus. 7th graders today are still experiencing that exact same thing. And yet, we have more mass shootings than days in the year. The media doesn't report on every mass shooting because gun violence has become normalized in the United States. And so what I use my platform for is to highlight when mass shootings happen, to talk about gun violence every single day that it happens or whenever it happens, to make sure that that's a story that never actually dies. And because until the epidemic ends, that's not a story that, in my opinion, can end. And it's the same thing with Ukraine, same thing with the Epstein files, same thing with
Mm.
any of that. It's very easy to just say, like, you know what, there's breaking news in this moment, and then 3 months later that news goes away. But the survivors of the of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes aren't getting justice. Gun violence victims aren't getting justice. Ukrainians aren't getting justice. And so I just continue to use my platform to advocate, I guess. I don't want to say advocate because that means taking a position on an issue, more of use my platform to highlight what's happening in these critical stories when mainstream media is kind of focused on the next big thing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, one of the things that is distinctive about your channels is just the volume of work that you put out. It's substantial and it's substantive. I think it's interesting. I think you put out a report over the weekend about recent foreign policy changes, right? They're really aligning U.S. foreign policy much more with Russia's foreign policy. And frequently you are citing original documents, whether those are U.S. government documents or court opinions, right? There's a quality of rigor that is pretty high, certainly for an independent journalist. But
Yeah.
if you were at the New York Times, or if you were at Politico or something, you'd have fact checkers, and you'd have an editor, and you'd have other people to help carry that load, right? So I'm curious to just kind of how you do it. Like, what is how do you, insofar as you can share, like, how do you keep up with that workflow? Obviously, you work very hard, right? Like that is sort of some of it. But you're kind of out there without a net in a way. Like you don't have this institution behind you, and so how do you do that? How do you manage it?
By always being online, truthfully. And also, so I think there is a difference between the work that I do and that of an investigative journalist at the New York Times or ProPublica. I don't work on stories for 3 months, tracking down a dozen sources, doing a ton of interviews for that one bombshell. I don't do that. Mine's more about volume and kind of more real-time updates rather than like the real investigative pieces. And about 50 to 60% of the work that I put out is based on firsthand sources, right? So I read a court opinion, I put it out. I see a Truth Social post from the president, I put it out. When Donald Trump posts something on Truth Social, I may make a video about it. I'm not saying whether what he is saying is true or false. The fact that he put it out is true, right? And that substantiates my reporting right there. Same thing with a court opinion. I just tell you what the court opinion says. As someone who's been a federal clerk, like I can read a 30-page opinion in 5 minutes and give you the gist of it. I don't need to wait for the New York Times to do it, read the Times analysis and then cite the Times. I can just do it myself. And so when you have a news cycle, as Lisa was saying, that's 24/7, so many things are happening so quickly, a lot of it is just first-hand reporting. So that's 50, 60% of the work. Then about 20% of the work, I have like a core trusted group of investigative journalists that I look to, ProPublica I look to. These organizations do really good work, and I want to uplift them as much as I can. So I look to them. I read them every day. And then the other 20% of the work, I get a ton of tips in my inbox, like all the time. And oftentimes I'm actually even afraid because I don't have the institutional backing behind me to publish them. Like early in the Trump administration in January, I got a tip with a classified memo attached to an email from the DIA. And I saw that and I was like, holy shit, like I could get in trouble if I post this, or like maybe I won't, but maybe they'll come after me and I'll have to get legal counsel. And so I waited. 2 hours later, NBC News published it, and then I was fine with it. But like, so there are times where it's like I do wait because I'm nervous.
You do have a way of reporting straight with the vast majority of what you cover, and it's there are so many creators / journalists who don't play it straight when they're covering the news, and that's what they're purporting to do. How do you one of the things that I think traditional journalism has really failed at is both sidesism, to not be willing to not have it's not that they should have an opinion on things, but they shouldn't be equally weighting a lie to a piece of evidence. So how do you make that work? Because your work is really compelling, and you've built this big following, but you're not doing it through wild sensationalism. You're not lighting your hair on fire every time you're on camera.
If I did that, I'd be balding a lot quicker than I currently am. Couple things. First, if you watch all my videos, and I don't encourage anyone to watch all my videos because I would go crazy doing that. My voice is very mundane through it all. It's the same tone, really. If I'm reporting on a bombing in Iran, or if I'm reporting on a housing issue in New York, it's the same. And I think by keeping my voice tone the same, it helps. And there are often times where I'm like, well, I want to laugh, or I want to scream, or I want to yell, because I'm just like, what the hell am I reporting on? This is crazy.
Yeah.
But I don't. And people in the comments are like, how do you refrain from laughing? So that's number one. Thing number two is I really just try to stick to the facts. There's been only one story where I legitimately included my opinion, and that is Ukraine. And that was at the beginning when I first started reporting about what my family was enduring. And I just felt compelled to do that. And so other than that, I stick to the facts. I just say, here's what it is. And like, you like it, you don't. That's not my problem. I don't tell you who to vote for, don't tell you who to support. Folks can find out who I supported online in 2024. That's not hard. But when I report news, it's not meant to change your opinion. It's meant to educate you and then give you the tools to change your opinion if you want to.
It's interesting. You came to my attention, I think, first from one of my kids talking about you, and I think it's a really to be clear. I know that your audience spans all generations. You have a very broad audience, but I think one of the things you've been most effective at is reaching young people. Lots of evidence that young people are increasingly not getting their news from traditional institutional sources. They're getting it from TikTok. They're getting it from Instagram, YouTube, whatever. And so having real evidence-based creators in those places bringing real news is super important. And that's a lot of the project that Lisa and I work on outside of this podcast. But one of the things I'm interested in is, if you go to the New York Times, if you go to the Washington Post, all of them have their challenges, including both sides, but they do have a kind of infrastructure of ethics, and they have published policies for various kinds of things that they do, corrections policies, right, all of that kind of stuff. As you think about your work, both as a creator and also as an audience member, because presumably you also consume content on these platforms, how do you think about who to trust, how you communicate to your audience that you're trustworthy?
Yeah, I mean, it takes time. I think building a trust and rapport with your audience takes a long time. And I think part of that is, number one, admitting when you're wrong. I think a lot of creators on the internet will allow information that is wrong to stay up because you make money off of it, truthfully. The social media platforms pay out creators. And so I could easily have a video that's going viral, and I see this happen all the time. And that story eventually is debunked, or something changes, whatever. And I'll take it down every single time. But most other creators will leave it up and just make another video, or may not even make another video. So that number one is I tell you when something I report on is incorrect. I think number two is the ethics that I hold myself to are the ethics that I hold myself to in a courtroom. Nothing I would publish on my TikTok, I wouldn't put in front of a judge on a legal brief. If I lie to a judge in a brief, I'll get disbarred. And I believe that people who lie on social media don't deserve to have a platform if you're trying to report the news. And so I challenge anyone who thinks that what I'm spreading is misinformation to show me misinformation. And I do that often. I'm like, okay, you think this is wrong? Show me. And oftentimes people will be like, oh, I just didn't see another outlet reporting on it, and now I do, and now you're right. The hardest challenge in all of this has been gaining legitimacy in this space, being that I'm not with the Washington Post or CNN or whatever. And so people's initial viewpoint when they see a video of mine is like, okay, well, no one else is reporting on this. There's no way it can be right? And then they wait an hour, and then when they see what I report on is accurate, and they're like, oh, wait, shit, he might be right. He might be on something.
Yeah.
So over time, doing that builds trust.
Maybe in that regard, you put out a report actually earlier today about some testimony that Kristi Noem had at the I don't remember what the committee was. It was a House committee, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
where she got a question about whether the U.S. had deported any veterans, and then was confronted very rapidly when she said no. She was confronted literally with a kind of live video of a U.S. veteran who had been. So it's very compelling. And I think the way you framed that was accurate, but it was also stronger than I think traditional news media would have said. Right? You were like, "This is perjury," right? Like that's kind of, or like, "It sure looks like perjury," right? Like,
well, I didn't. I said she lied.
If you were at a traditional journalistic institution, that would have been like the language around that would have been softer than that, right?
Sure.
I think. How do you think about the value of that sort of very like strong, the strength of that language versus it appears that you know how it would be sort of couched in a different institution.
I actually thought about this before publishing that video, precisely because of this exact question that you're asking. And I thought about it, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to think about this like I'm a prosecutor in a courtroom. I have a witness in front of me. Witness says, no, the sky is green. I confront her with the sky is blue. I impeached her. It's a lie, right? She's under oath. Okay. What do I say to a jury when I present that? I don't say, oh, it appears as though that she was wrong. No, I say she lied when she was confronted with the truth on the stand. And with Kristi Noem in this situation, I mean, if it was maybe the undersecretary of housing and urban and development being asked about immigration, I maybe would have been a little softer in my language because that's not their purview. Kristi Noem has been quoted in multiple stories in the past regarding U.S. military veterans being detained by ICE. She knows that U.S. military veterans have been detained by ICE because she has admitted it in the past. And for her to go and say no and then being confronted on it by a blatant yes, that is a lie. Now, whether or not she intended to lie to Congress, that's why I say she lied, not perjury, because that's a little different. I mean, look at it, listen to it yourself.
Yeah.
So much of what can be frustrating with exactly what Jon was just describing, the softening of language and, finding 500 euphemisms for the word lie. So, that doesn't have to be included in the story. I think the entire first Trump administration was, just a bonanza of ways to say someone is lying without having to actually use the word. I guess when you're pushing that kind of language and you are forcing others who are doing reporting to confront their use of the squishy instead of just calling a lie. How do you feel that when you're doing this and other creators other journalists who are trying to call it what it is, are able to kind of change the paradigm of what journalism looks like? You're having these conversations with really serious people who you're doing interviews with now through your Substack and other elected officials or people in positions of power don't seem to be shying away from you being willing to be very frank about what it is that you're reporting. Do you think you can shift us to a place where we can just say the truth and it doesn't have to be a scary thing if you're a journalist?
I do, because I actually think that journalism, that paradigm that you're talking about, has shifted historically. I think if the year was 2002, 2003, and I have evidence of as a journalist that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, I wouldn't be afraid, and a journalist back then wouldn't be afraid to say George Bush is lying. Then came Donald Trump, right? And Donald Trump fundamentally changed the way journalists report the news because they're afraid of getting sued. And so the paradigm shifted starting in 2015 and substantially shifted this past year because the last thing ABC wants is to pay another $16 million to the president. And so I do think we can shift that paradigm again to be more blunt and more honest with our reporting. One of the biggest things that I advocate for is this idea that we should stop sane washing our elected leaders, right? If Joe Biden put out any one of Donald Trump's Truth Social posts, Jake Tapper would be a best-selling New York Times author 10 times over, right? They'd be calling for the 25th Amendment. And I'm not saying that we should do the same thing for Donald Trump exactly. What I'm saying is we should not just let it go because that's Trump being Trump. And we should be honest and recognize that there is this double standard in the media, and it's time to shift it a little bit, which is what I'm trying to do.
You cite the ABC example. We see all of this capitulation from major news media, CBS now kind of egregiously with like a sort of editor-in-chief that is really almost overtly kind of doing the administration's bidding, and a kind of in-house minder on 60 Minutes and all of this. Now we have the prospect of even more consolidation with CNN being acquired. And I wonder how you think about the role of independent media as all of these institutions sort of fall under the sway of giant corporations or individuals that are kind of aligned with the regime, or at least are very wary of sort of pissing the regime off, right? Like, what do you think that does to independent media?
I think that it empowers independent media, and I don't call it the regime because I think that language is a little too powerful for me. Even I think we do live in a democracy, no matter how much the administration wants to take down democratic principles. I think what they're doing to mainstream media is really empowering a whole new generation of independent media. I think that it's kind of left this void because I tell everyone my audience doesn't watch cable news, my audience doesn't read print, my audience scrolls TikTok, right? I'm not competing for views with CBS or MSNBC. I have my own audience. And I'm just filling a gap that's been left by an institution that has constantly failed a sect of America. Would I love to reach every American? Yes. Is that a reasonable thing? No. I'm reaching people who I don't watch the news because they're young and they don't really know what news is, or they're so tired of the news that they're trying to get it from someone else.
You mentioned TikTok in particular. Of course, TikTok, in the U.S., potentially owned by the Ellisons, or at least part of an ownership group that currently owns CBS, may eventually come to own CNN. Right? How do you think about the risk of those platforms also being captured? Obviously, you are very broad. You have audiences on multiple platforms. You're on really all of the high scale distribution platforms, and maybe that's the answer: is you just spread your bets. But yeah,
that is the answer. I mean, diversifying the platforms is so critical if you want to be a creator. Because I learned the lesson a bit the hard way. Went back in January when TikTok was banned for 18 hours, however long it was. I had to figure out a different platform to post on. At the time, I had an Instagram following of 20,000. I had a Substack of 20,000. I didn't have a Facebook, didn't have a YouTube, had a massive TikTok. That was it. And so if TikTok went down, there goes my entire platform. And so I had to quickly pivot. And that's why I've been really pushing folks to these other platforms. Because to me, TikTok, I don't know how long it's going to be around in its current form. Like you say, the Ellisons are going to be purchasing it. I don't know what the future holds for TikTok. But right now, I'm just trying to like diversify as much as I can.
As you diversify, I assume you're also thinking down the road about, is Aaron Parnas one-man band forever? Are you building this into more of a media entity? What's the goal?
Everyone wants to know. Everyone asks me. and I tell them all the same answer that I'll tell you because it is the truth. I don't know. My entire life, I had planned out ever since I was in middle school and elementary school. X year, I was going to go to law school. X year, I was going to run for office. X year, I was going to do this, do that. I always planned out my life. Never in a million years would I have planned out where I was today. And so for the first time, I haven't even been doing this a year full time. For the first time, I'm able to sit back and finally like just allow whatever opportunities come to me. And I get to decide, do I like doing this? Yes. Do I not like doing this? No. I don't have to take opportunities I don't want to. I'm not bound to any certain job, right? Like I'm my own boss. And so for the first time, I can just sit back and just let the cards fall as they may. And that's what I'm going to do. And so if in the next year I expand this and build a bigger media entity, great. If I join a major media company and have my own show at night, great. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of let's see where this goes.
Okay, so I can't just let that float by that you mentioned running for office. So I'm gonna have to follow up on that one. Is that something that you think about doing? You certainly have a large platform now to be able to use as a launching pad.
Yeah, I mean, I tell everyone that I would only run for office if I am the best candidate for the office that's open. Right now, I'm not looking to run for office. It's not something I want to do. You could be more influential on the outside than on the inside, especially in
Mhm.
this day and age when you can't really get much done anywhere, no matter what office you're in. But my goal right now is just to educate as many people as possible, and then we'll see what happens in the future.
I wonder for your work and some of your peers is how the heck do you take a vacation, right? How do you like
Or a
once in
sick
a
day.
while, even at the law firm, once in a while they let you when you hit your billable hours targets, you could take a vacation, and that's pretty tough, I imagine. When you're the face in front of the camera, it's not like you can just step away. So yeah, I wonder how you think about like that, just that practical, just being able to get a break and recover a little bit.
I don't. I don't. I haven't taken a true vacation for as long as I can remember. I don't take days off. I don't take breaks much. I go on vacation. Doesn't mean I'm not working on vacation. I
Hmm.
think someone
Hmm.
like I was always taught growing up that if you want to be the best in any field, then you have to work your ass off to get there, and you have to work harder than everyone else. And so for me, this isn't like I was never handed anything in this industry. I'm just, as some like to say, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps, and will continue to do that to stay at the top.
Yeah.
And there will come a time where I will slow down. There will come a time where someone else does it better than me. And at that point, I'll take a step back. This is not a forever thing.
Yeah.
We'll see
Yeah.
what happens. At some point, I won't be the hot shot Forbes 30 under 30. I'll be 45 years old, hopefully with many kids and a wife, and be able to like settle down a little bit.
Different question, but back to an earlier one. I'm curious, as someone who has built substantial audiences really across all of these platforms, Substack, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. What do you think of the audiences there as being meaningfully different? Are you putting out exactly the same content for all of those audio? Obviously, Substack has more of a text-based newsletter along with
Yeah.
video, probably. So there's in that way it's different. But do the audiences feel like they are composed differently to you? Like they want different things?
The only place is Substack where it's different than all the others, just because I would say the 640,000 or so subscribers there are kind of like the most loyal followers that I have, like the ones that are
Mm-hmm.
willing to read everything I put out and watch everything. So that's a little different. I have more of like a communication, open dialogue with them. I'm in chats with them. I
Mhm.
talk to them. I understand
Mm-hmm.
where they're coming from. Other platforms, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, I mean, it's all kind of the same content. Some places are longer form, others are shorter form. But it's kind of the same. I don't really pay attention too much to the audience on like I don't read my comments. I don't do all that.
Yeah, I think a recipe for staying sane, not reading the comments.
Yeah,
It's
for sure.
good.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, in addition to the comments and any of us who have done anything on social media on the public side know that the comments can be pretty rough. But even if you're not reading that stuff, what you're not doing a cooking show. This isn't light content. This is taking in and then processing it to the point that you can communicate it really effectively. So it isn't just washing over you. You mentioned early in the conversation that there are times you want to laugh, there are times you want to scream, and you don't get to do that. So why aren't you insane at this point? Like how have you not burned out, and how has this not driven you crazy? Because it is a lot. Even if it's only been a year, it's been a hell of a year.
So I am burnt out, but I've been burnt out since I started law school. So for 8 years, I've been burnt out.
The
I mean,
norm is now burnout.
it's just a constant state of burnout. For me, the best way that I could describe like the way I cope with everything, I have a very strict routine. And when my routine is like interrupted, then it's when I start to spiral. Like I go to the gym every single day for an hour to 2 hours, every single day without fail. I sleep 8 to 9 hours a night, no matter what. If I sleep 6 hours or even 7 hours, my entire next day is like messed up. If I don't go to the gym, my entire next day is messed up. I start feeling that burnout. Um, by staying in my routine, I've really been able to kind of just compartmentalize things. All the news and stuff, like truly, like, and I say this from a place of privilege, but also from a place of numbness, it doesn't impact me anymore. Like it did at the beginning when I was reading it and understanding it, but now I've become so numb to everything I'm listening to that nothing impacts me because I'm just like, oh, we're gonna bomb this country today. Okay, like that's just where we're at, and I have to be there because if I internalized everything, I would go crazy. I really would.
What does your actual workflow look like? Like, what are you know, how are you talked about ProPublica and a few other sources that you trust. And so that you're reading those every day, but is that automated? Is that you've got 100 tabs open on your desktop and you're just pulling
Yeah.
stuff? Is that like, how do you
So
do
I
it?
have multiple screens running all day. One is C-SPAN 24/7. I'm watching the craziness on Capitol Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, my email inbox is constantly flooded. I have Pacer accounts where court opinions are often sent to my email, court orders and cases that I'm tracking. I have tips coming into my email inbox all day. Twitter and Truth Social are on another screen, constantly updating. And then that's 70% of the workflow. Then you have some,
Mm-hmm.
or like 60%. Then you have 20% have access to wire services. So the wire, I'm like constantly monitoring the wire as like the AP and writers. And then when I have time, I read ProPublica, I read the Times, I read the Post, like they're more investigative pieces. And that's the last 20% when I have time to do that.
What makes a good Aaron Parnas story?
At this point, I've kind of understood what story is going to go viral and what story won't. And I don't want to say it's a good story because that I don't want to frame it good or bad. More of like good in terms of virality, in terms of what people will see. The good stories are the ones that impact the most people, right? So a good story in the past 24 hours, and this is like I said, not good in terms of because it's not good. Measles outbreak in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Measles outbreak is accelerating, it's surging. Hundreds of people are in quarantine in northern South Carolina. That is a good story in terms of virality because it impacts so many people. Same thing with whenever there's a recall of some sort. That impacts millions of people. And so that is a good story to report on because it'll transcend just a little hyper partisan bubble. The bad stories are the really niche DC insider stuff, the stuff that like most people won't care about. But DC insiders love it for whatever reason. And oftentimes I won't touch them. Like the latest one that I really am kind of frustrated with is like the whole Olivia Nuzzi discourse. No one cares about that. No one's going to read her book. No one
Like 200 people care about it a lot.
Like am I going to interview her and make that a whole thing? No, I'm not going to do that. Like what's the point? And yet far too many DC insiders make that their whole lives for like 2 days. And like that doesn't make any sense.
Love your perspective on this. I used to be in and out of DC a lot, and even riding in the cabs in and out from the airport. I get in the conversations with the cabbies, and what they were focused on, even because they're inside the bubble, was like nobody else is talking about that. Like no one cares. You are intensely passionate about this weird thing that the rest of the country it has no meaning for when you're trying to have conversations with members of Congress or, other people who are in influential positions. Do you have to push back on that a fair amount and get them to actually talk about the things that people outside the bubble care about?
Sometimes I think more so I have to push back when they start using terms that only people inside the bubble know about. I think that's the bigger thing. It's like when a congressman says NDAA, the average person doesn't know what the hell that is, right? I know what it is, but so I'm like, okay, well, great answer, but like, what's the NDAA? Like bare bones basic. Because, and when I started doing this work with Ukraine, most of my audience couldn't point out Ukraine on a map. And I'm not saying that as like they're uneducated type of thing. I'm saying that most Americans don't care about Eastern Europe and never did care about Eastern Europe until there's a war there. And so you have to educate people as though they know nothing. And that's how I approach things. I approach it as though you have never seen this news story before. Let me tell you how to understand it like I would. And then you can go and do your own research and be an NDA expert or a Ukraine expert if you want to be.
One part of your story that we haven't touched on is that you've had your family has been, in some ways, a part of the news in a big news story. So you would have seen what it looks like to have an important story that you're close to and have some visibility into, kind of up close. And I know the few times that I've had, in different circumstances, news stories that I have been very close to. And then I see this story, I'm like, well, that's not right. There's some important ways that's not right. It's often, maybe it's wrong by omission, maybe it's wrong by commission. More often omission, I think, is kind of eliding important facts or sort of simplifying things in ways that are kind of leaving out important nuance or whatever. But as somebody who's been pretty close to the news, does that impact how you think about what you do?
I think being so close to the news cycle in that way has really taught me how hollow the news cycle is, or just institutions are. And I say that because people think oh, it's such a big deal to be excited in CNN or appear on TV for MSNBC. It's not that hard, right? These journalists are just average people. People view these institutions as though they're these big kings in the castle, when in reality, getting in these institutions is not actually that difficult, piercing through. And so that's the biggest takeaway I have from that. When I was going through it with my family, I saw how easy it was for journalists to chew a source up and spit them out. How easy it was for your life to completely be turned upside down. How they frame certain things that are just not appropriate in terms of framing to get clicks. I see that. And so I don't want to replicate the bad behavior that I saw.
This is one of the great secrets of adulthood, is that nobody knows what they're doing in life, and we ascribe a lot of great wisdom to people, and the closer you get to it, the more you realize people are making it up.
Correct.
Yeah.
And even when someone is attempting to get it right, the minutia of a story is can be so immense.
Yes.
That being able to process that in you started to research a story at 8:00 in the morning, you have a 2 p.m. deadline to get it in, and you need to have enough of an understanding about this monstrous amount of information that you're going to get it right. And it seems like the likelihood of that happening very often is not great, which is why I really appreciate you mentioned early in the conversation that you take things down when they're not right, that you acknowledge when you've made mistakes. There's so little of that. Do you think that is part of rebuilding the trust in media, that people can, pull back the curtain a bit more as an independent and say, we get it wrong sometimes. And here's where I just got it wrong.
Without a doubt. And not gaslighting people that they're the ones that thinking that tell them you're wrong. Be authentic, be honest, 100%.
Aaron, I think we're coming to the end of our time. Super grateful for you spending time with us. I think your work is exceptional, and folks should follow you. Where can they find you? Everywhere, I think. But yeah, where should folks find you?
My Substack, The Parnas Perspective. Go check it out, and then Aaron Parnas on all the other social media platforms.
Super. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me,
Aaron. Wonderful to have you here. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Jon, I started out the conversation with Aaron in his introduction talking about how he's 26 years old. And when I was 26 years old, I know what I had accomplished, and it wasn't that. And when he brought up that, not only has he accomplished this, but he was really accomplishing something on TikTok, and then they just destroyed what he had built. And he kept going.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's kind of interesting, right? I mean, at 26, I was maybe Aaron and I were at parity at that point. I was a junior associate in a law firm, but that the kind of personal resilience to drive forward and do what he's done is pretty extraordinary. I found the whole conversation just super interesting. He's a very seems very well kind of grounded, sort of understands both what he's built and kind of to some degree what seems like the ephemerality of it, right? Maybe it doesn't last, maybe whatever. And he's kind of seizing the moment now through a lot of hard work and a lot of determination. But so super, super cool. I also found that just as like an aside, in watching his videos over months, the tendency, the very kind of flat voice affect, right, is very that like that's actually intentional, which was like a super interesting thing to me, and it makes sense. So
Yeah, especially since we know that a lot of people, in order to build followings, they're intentionally being over the top and
right,
melodramatic in
totally,
their language and their
yeah,
movements. All of it is bombast and or extreme humor, but something extreme to be able to build up that following. And I'm really impressed and pretty encouraged that you can play it straight and you can deliver the news the way he
yeah.
is, and you can build a following.
Yeah, no, it's
And
interesting. I mean, I think
probably
in
a
all
good
these
thing
things,
for all of us.
totally. Yeah, in all these things, I think it is. We're not going back; we're going forward, and this is at least one version of what forward looks like, and it's I think it's relatively encouraging in that sense. Yeah, super super interesting guy, and it was a fun conversation.
Yep, for sure. We'll have more of them. Everybody, please share, make sure people are finding out about these conversations. I do think that they're important. So we are obviously the Signal Fire podcast, but we're at Get Noodle on all the social platforms, and we are on every podcast platform. So please give us a thumbs up, give us a like, hit that like button and share it widely.
Thanks, everybody.